Hi. We'll do that again. Hi. I'm one person on stage and there's a lot of you there. So if at any point I have more energy than you, shame on you. So we'll do that again. Hi. Much better. Hi, my name is Punya Arora. I'm a stand-up comedian and a writer. And I'm born and brought up in Bangalore, although my family's from Punjab. I guess that's where my humor comes from. I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you. My story is that my mom is a single parent. And when I was born, the guy that I was born to, he wanted a son. And so when he saw me in the hospital, he got really excited. Yeah, he got really excited because Punjabi kids are born so hairy that you can't tell if it's a guy or a girl. And so he got really excited and he said, "Oh my God, doctor, what a beautiful boy. Yeah, when does this appear?" And doctor was like, "That's not a plant, that's not how this works." And that's the first time he found out that I'm a girl, I'm a daughter, and he had no idea what to do with me. And I don't blame him. I blame Amir Khan because they hadn't made Dangal till then. So we didn't know na ki choriyan choro se kam na hove. And so now because of this, I've never met the guy, I've never seen him, I have no idea what he looks like. And I love that about my life because it brings to my life an element of surprise. You know how in Delhi people say, "Do you know who my dad is?" When I say it, I actually mean it. And the best part about my story is that whenever I tell people, they end up feeling sad for me. Yeah, they're like, "Oh my God, that's so brave. You talk about it on stage, oh my God. Oh my God, but that's so sad. You've never met your dad, that's so sad." And I always want to tell these people only one thing, that don't feel sad for me, because unlike most people, I only disappoint one parent. But the best part about my story is that I have a very supportive mom. I have a very supportive mom, which is why I'm here doing what I do today. My mom is so supportive that at one point there was this dance in school and she came to me and she said, "Oh my God, you were the best in this dance." I was like, "Mom, I wasn't even in this dance." That's how supportive she is as a parent. And now this is my story. And at some point, I decided to talk about my story on stage. I wrote a show, which I hope you'll see online at some point this year, but no timelines on anything. Yeah, so I wrote this show and people heard about it, talked about it. And at some point, because of my story, I got called to do a TEDx talk a while back. And so when I was doing this talk, there was another speaker there called Sonam Nair, who is the director. And so I spoke about my story and she heard my story. A year later, she got an offer to do this show. And if you've watched the show, you'd know. If you haven't watched the show, watch it. It's amazing. Of course, I'm biased, but it still is. But if you haven't watched the show starts with our main character's divorce. And so when Sonam got the show, she thought about it and said, "Hey, I remember that girl talking about her mom's divorce. Maybe she can add some flavor to this show." And she asked me if I want to be part of the writer's room. And I couldn't believe the message that I received. Because the answer is, of course, yes. But I was also scared because I was like, "Hey, wait a minute, I haven't really written a web series before. I write my own jokes, I write my own." And she said, "You know what, it's fine. We'll see the experience. We just want your thoughts. Maybe you'll make divorce interesting. Maybe you'll make something interesting, come be a part of it." I went to be a part of it, all thanks to my story. And little did I know that that was going to change my life entirely. I'm now also a full-time writer, and it's amazing. I love it. And so the thing is, what I realized is that we all have a story, whether we tell it. And the thing is that we think that only artists and writers are telling their stories. It's not that. We're human beings, and as human beings, we all have a story to tell. And you can tell your story in any way, through your business, through your work, through your conversations, through your drawings, through your art, through your music, anything. But the truth is that we all have a story. You might be rich, you might be poor, you might go from poor to rich. All of it adds to your story. And the reason that I think a lot of us don't talk about our story is because we think, "Hey, who's going to want to hear that?" So when I was writing my show, my initial thoughts were, Why is a comedy audience going to come there and sit and listen to me talk about my mom being a single parent, talk about her divorce? Of course, I'm going to put in my effort and make it as funny and as witty as possible. But why does someone want to hear this? But I really, really wanted to talk about it because it was my story. And I did. And to my surprise, I would have, whenever I performed the show, I would have people come up to me after the show. And a lot of times it was women who were going through a divorce or in a bad marriage, and they would come to me and say, oh my God, I loved your story, it gave me so much hope. Some people would come to me and say, I have a daughter, and my family is hell-bent on me having a son. And I realized, even though I thought that my story is something that people might not want to listen to, people might not want to relate to, a lot of people were relating to it. And here's the best thing that I realized, is that relatability inspires connection. The best kind of jokes and the best kind of stories that you hear are when you're listening to it and you go, oh my God, that happened to me. Yeah? So the other day I was at an airport. I'll give you an example of this. I was at an airport, and I'm the kind of person who always stresses about having extra baggage. I have no clue why, but I just don't want to pay them that extra money for that 1-2 kgs. I'm like, how dare you charge me? There's so much place there. But I'm always worried. I want my bag to be perfect, if not less. I'm always that kind of person. And here's the thing, I thought I was the only one who stresses like that. So I went in, I finished my check-in and everything. I was doing my stressing. My bag was 14 kgs. I went, yes, I felt like I won something. Yeah. I went inside, I finished the security check. I'm sitting at the boarding gate, and there's this couple sitting next to me, and this lady is fighting with her husband saying, I told you shouldn't have packed those 2 extra shoes. Yeah? Now our baggage was 22 kgs. We wouldn't have been that because it's only because of your shoes. And they were having this argument, and I couldn't help but smile. Because I was like, oh my God, I thought I was alone, but there are other people who go through this. It was so exciting. And that's when I realized that, dude, relatability inspires connection, and that's amazing. The other thing I realized is that sometimes in our lives, when we're going through something, or the kind of stories that we have, our stories, we wonder, hey, why am I going through this? When I was growing up, there were times when I would wonder, no, why is this my situation? Why don't I have a dad? Why is this like this? Why is my mom alone? These would be my thoughts sometimes. Why? And recently, a friend of mine told me something which changed my life. So whenever I would talk about these things that were happening to me, if I'd say, this thing went wrong and this thing was bad and I don't know what to do and I don't like this, why is this happening to me? My friend Shaila, she would ask me a very simple question. She would always say, whenever you're going through anything, ask yourself, what is the brilliance in this? And I think brilliance is such a beautiful word because it means intense, bright light. And the first time she asked me this, I didn't understand because I was talking to her about some work that had gone entirely wrong and I could see no solution. I couldn't see a way out of it. I couldn't see any of it. And she asked me, what is the brilliance in this? And I was in tears and I was like, what do you mean? What is the brilliance? What is the brilliance? And then she asked me again, she said, what is the brilliance? And then I realized, what is that? In any situation, what is that intense, bright light that hits you? What is the thing that you're learning from that thing that you're going through? And it really changed my perspective on so many things. Because now, anytime I'm going through anything, I stop and ask myself, hey, what is the brilliance in this? And trust me, there always is one. I learned this in photography, that the best kind of photographs are the ones that have bright light and darkness both. The really contrasty images. And the darkness in these images, the black spaces, are usually called negative space. And I realized that these photographs catch your eyes more than the ones with flat lighting. It's because they have more drama. They have light and darkness both. And that's how life is supposed to be. That's how our stories are supposed to be. If you think that your story is going to be just rosy and happy, with everything going great all the time, it's going to be very, very, very boring. You need some drama to make your stories exciting. I'll give you a silly example. If I came here and told you, I went to the supermarket the other day and I bought some groceries. You'll be like, okay, that's great. Good for you. But if something happened to me, if I told you, I went to the supermarket the other day and I tripped and I fell and this lady helped me and she came out of nowhere and then it turns out that my mom and her knew each other from... it's already more exciting, it's already more interesting. And so whenever things are happening, instead of going, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, what is the brilliance in this? And know that something happening is always better than nothing happening because it makes for a much more interesting story. I'm also going to tell you at this point that my favorite story in the whole world is Alice in Wonderland. It's possibly the first story I heard as a kid, and I fell in love with it instantly. Because at that point, that was the first time I realized that, oh my God, through a story, you can enter an entirely different world, and anything can happen in this world. A rabbit is running with a clock, there's a cat that's smiling and talking. Anything can happen in this world that you create. And just that thought became so exciting and so big for me that, oh my God, you can just create something that doesn't exist, and once you've created it, it exists. How brilliant is that? The other thing about Alice in Wonderland is that every time I go back to it, and I've read it many, many times, I've watched the film many times, and every time I go back to it, I learn something new from it. And I love that about it. But I'm going to share two of my favorite quotes from it. One of them is where Alice is talking to the cat, and she says, "But I don't want to go among mad people." "Oh, you can't help that," said the cat. "We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad." And I love that so much. I love that so much because I think we forget that there is madness in all of us. We get into our routines and we get into our lives and we start achieving our goals and we start thinking about what's next, what's next, what's next. And we forget about the madness that's in us. We also forget that we are all the same. No matter how different we are all the same. We're all mad here. And we forget that oneness amongst us. And I think a re-reminder is a great thing because it brings you to doing better things and creating better. Another one of my favorite quotes is that, quote from Alice in Wonderland, "Well, sometimes I've believed in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." Can you imagine that? 6 impossible things before breakfast. The first time I read that line, I have to say the first time I reread that line, because I read it as a kid initially, and it didn't register the way it did later. But the first time I reread that line, I had to pause instantly. Can you imagine thinking about 6 impossible things before breakfast? Most of the times, we go our entire lives without even thinking about one impossible thing. We don't end up believing so many things, even though it's just in our imagination. It's not so hard to think that, oh my God, I'm going to be the greatest comedian in the world. But at the same time, we get attacked by different thoughts of, but how am I going to do this? I'm from a small town. How am I going to get here? No. Your job is just to believe in those 6 impossible things. Whether they happen or not, your job is just to believe. I'll give you an example. If you cook, you'll know this. And if you don't cook, you'll still get it, I think. That when you marinate chicken, even if you're vegetarians, you'll get this. You don't have to eat the example. When you marinate chicken or any meat, it tastes of exactly what you marinate with. So if I put in salt and red chilies, it's going to taste like salt and red chilies. If I put in lime and thyme, rhyming by chance, but if you put in lime and thyme, it's going to taste of lime and thyme. It's not going to taste of salt and red chilies if I don't add it. And the thing is that we as human beings, we're the same. You are going to be exactly the person that you marinate your thoughts with. So if you think positive thoughts, if you think impossible dreams, if you think big dreams, that's who you're going to radiate as a person. It's just very simple logic. Similarly, if you're going to sit and think of negative thoughts, judgy thoughts, that's who you're going to radiate as a person. It's just simple. The meat tastes only of what you marinate it with. And so I choose to marinate myself with good thoughts, with amazing things, because that's what I want to exude and that's what I want to be. And that's the very simple rule I follow. Another thing I've noticed as creative people And this is not just for creative people, actually, because we say this a lot for creative people, but I've noticed that as human beings, we all go through this. There's something called an imposter syndrome, where you don't feel like you're good enough. Yeah? And I think we as human beings go through this at all times. And I'm just going to give you a very simple hack to get over this. I don't know if you've heard of this phrase. It's called BYOB. Yeah, it's mostly used at parties. But that's the same hack you use to get over self-doubt and insecurity. BYOB. Bring your own belief. It doesn't matter if somebody else believes in you or not. It doesn't matter if somebody else believes in your idea or not. It doesn't matter. Bring your own belief to the table. Believe in yourself at all times. And you'll see how things work out so much better. Just BYOB. Another thing I've noticed, and this is something that I'm guilty of as well, is being part of the hustle culture. Yeah, we all do this, we're part of the hustle culture. And I was the same. What's my next achievement? What am I doing next? I'm doing something right now, but I'm always like, oh, what am I doing next? When I'll get there, I'll do this. When I get there. Why? I realize that a lot of us are constantly living life in survival mode. But that's not what we're here for. We are not here to survive. And it felt like a slap when I realized this. We're not here to survive life. We're here to thrive life. Yeah, we're here to thrive in life. And so I started getting out of this survival mode in my mind. I started getting out of this hustle sort of moment. And I started saying, instead of saying, what am I going to achieve next? I started asking myself, what makes me happy right now? What makes me happy right now? And that's how I live my life now. I still slip every now and then, but that's what adds drama to my story. But I always ask myself now, what makes me happy now? And I'll leave you with this last thing, which is the best advice I've got. I got it from Sonam, the director. She says, do it for the story. Now, I'm somebody who enjoys the familiar, the comfort zone. I like all of that. But when you step out of it, that's where all the magic happens. That's what people say, right? And I remember one day I was invited to a party where I didn't want to go. And I was telling her, I was like, oh, this is going to be so boring. And she said, so what? Do it for the story. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, well, if you don't go there, you have nothing to say about it. You have no story. Do it for the story. Of course, don't use this advice recklessly and jump off a cliff and say, I'm doing it for the story. No. Be mindful about it, but if you ever think you're the type of person who likes to stay in the familiar, stay in your comfort zone, and you're invited or you get the opportunity to do other things, and even if you're not, like I'm somebody who signs up for a lot of classes, do that. But do it for the story. Do things in your life. Do it for the story. Because you have to remember is that your story is important, and so are you. Thank you.